I left that house without slamming the door. No theatrics, no parting speech. Just me, a worn-out backpack, and a chipped mug I didn't realize I was still holding until the porch light flickered above me. The mug had a hairline crack running down one side, the kind that you keep anyway because it feels like home. Fitting, I guess. It had more in common with me than anyone inside that house ever had. Inside, the party was still going. Rowan's voice was booming through the living room speakers. Her stream had hit 50,000 followers, and she was bathing in the kind of praise only the internet could give. Artificial and bottomless. Mom brought out cupcakes with glittery frosting, and Dad was fumbling with the ring light like he was setting up some kind of award ceremony. It was like watching a reality show from behind a two-way mirror, loud, polished, and completely detached from anything real. I stood in the doorway, invisible but fully present. That's how it always felt with them. Present but unseen. I wasn't even in the shot, just outside the frame with my cracked mug and fraying sweater. Then it happened. Rowan turned to me, her eyes wild, her voice sharp. "Why did you have to ruin it?" she snapped, loud enough to be heard over the music, but low enough to sound like a whisper meant to slice. Delilah didn't even flinch. "She's not wrong," she said, her tone flat. Just that. No hesitation. No question. "And Dad?" Cliff rubbed the side of his head, like it was all just too much for him. He didn't look up. Didn't meet my eyes. He never does. Rowan had this way of looking at me like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out. She once said, "You're a storm that follows me everywhere." Back then, I thought she meant I was intense. Overwhelming. Now I understand, it was blame. She's always blamed me for her storms, as if I bring the thunder just by standing still. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just walked upstairs, grabbed my backpack, stuffed it with what little I cared to take, and walked back down into the room where no one missed me. No one asked me to stay. Not even out of politeness. Delilah's final blow came just as I reached the door. "You've ruined her life," she said quietly. "Honestly, you've ruined ours too." It wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of sentence that echoes, that lives in the walls of your memory longer than you expect. I think if she'd screamed, I could have brushed it off. But spoken so calmly, it landed like a quiet verdict. Final. So I left. And in leaving, I realized how small my world had become. Just a single bag, a mug, and silence. By the time the sun pushed its way through the blinds of the motel room I checked into, I had 14 missed calls. All from home. Well, home. I didn't answer them. I watched them light up on my cracked phone screen and flicker out one by one. 14 little ghosts of a family that had never really seen me. Funny, isn't it? How the calls only come when you've walked away. The room smelled like stale cigarette smoke and citrus-scented air freshener, the kind they use when they want to cover up years of ghosts. The carpet was thin, scratchy under my socks. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't bother unpacking. It wasn't home, but for the first time, it belonged to no one but me. I sat on the edge of the bed with my shoes still on. The laces were frayed, dirt-streaked, a reminder of how little I'd walked for myself lately. It was always for someone else. For their errands, their crises, their spotlight. And here I was, alone. It was strange. Not good, not bad. Just still. The silence in that motel room didn't echo. It settled. Like dust in the corners of the room or the layer of fatigue that had wrapped itself around my shoulders. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. I just counted. $42 left. 3 wrinkled 20s and 2 crumpled ones, folded into my wallet like a bad joke. The kind of joke where the punchline was a vending machine dinner and praying no one asked for a deposit. I looked at the nightstand drawer. Didn't open it. I knew the Bible was in there. But I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear from a God who stayed silent while my own family erased me. A faint buzzing pulled me back. My phone lit up, not a call this time. Just a calendar reminder blinking like it still believed in relevance. Mother's Day gift, unopened. 2 years ago. I stared at it. That reminder had survived 3 phone upgrades and 4 address changes. I don't even remember setting it. Maybe I had thought I'd use it as proof someday that I tried, that I was thoughtful, that I gave her something delicate and handmade and heartfelt. It was a silk handkerchief, monogrammed with her initials. Pale blue, hand-stitched. Took me a week to finish. I'd hidden it in her drawer because I knew she wouldn't open it in front of everyone. Truth is, she never opened it at all. They never opened it. They never opened me. I said it out loud, louder than a whisper but softer than a scream. They never opened it. They never opened me. The sentence sat in the room like another piece of forgotten luggage. I looked up. The ceiling stain had the faint outline of a star. Or maybe it was a burn mark from something long extinguished. Either way, it looked like something that used to shine. I laid back without undressing, my arms crossed tightly across my chest. It was less about comfort and more about holding myself together. Somewhere down the hall, a child coughed. Then silence again. Silence and the soft whir of the air conditioning unit that blinked blue in the dark. I don't know how long I lay like that still, breathing carefully like I might disappear if I shifted too hard. But eventually my fingers twitched. A small defiance. I reached for my laptop. Not to scroll. Not to numb. To build. Even if it was just an empty document and a blinking cursor, it was mine. Maybe the only thing in this whole city that was. The coffee shop smelled like over-roasted beans and burned toast. Not the kind of charm you read about in lifestyle magazines, but the kind that says, we're open and we have Wi-Fi. That was enough for me. Morning Glory Cafe. The name was painted in peeling yellow across the window, barely visible behind streaks of last night's rain. Inside, the tables wobbled and the chairs creaked, and yet it felt sturdier than anything I'd left behind. I chose the seat near the wall outlet. Not for comfort, just practicality. My laptop's battery was as tired as I was. The homepage of the tutoring site hadn't changed much. Same blue header, same dated font. My old profile blinked at me like a ghost from a better version of myself. SAT tutoring. College prep. Essay coaching. I stared at the picture next to my name, me from 5 years ago, with curled hair and a blazer I'd borrowed from Rowan. I deleted it. Instead, I took a new photo with a webcam. No filters. Just me, under the flickering cafe light, with under-eye circles and all. I rewrote the bio, this time not trying to sound impressive, just honest. I believe in helping students find the way they think best, not the way someone else tells them to. Then I hit update. 12 applications. I sent out 12 that afternoon. Some to parents I'd worked with before, others to total strangers. Each one felt like tossing a pebble into a well and hoping for an echo. Halfway through the second cup of burnt coffee, my phone buzzed. A new message. Hi, my name is Denise. I'm Riley's mom. We saw your profile and we're kind of desperate. Desperate. That word I knew too well. But this time, it didn't come from me. It was a call for help, not from family, not from obligation, but from someone who believed I could actually fix something. We set up the session for the next day. I walked back to the motel with a strange sense of purpose humming beneath my skin. Quiet. Tentative. but real. The next afternoon, Riley sat across from me at a corner table. 14, maybe 15. Hoodie, earbuds, that look teens get when they're trying not to look scared. He slid the math textbook across to me without a word. I opened it and pointed to the problem. Want to walk me through what confuses you? He shrugged. It's like, all of it. So I tried. Slowly. Not just teaching, but asking questions. Letting him talk, even when his words came out sideways. And then, 30 minutes in, he looked up and said, "You're the only one who explains this in a way that makes sense." It landed with more weight than I expected. Like someone had just handed me a mirror and said, "See? You're still here." After he left, I sat for a while, watching the door, watching the light change through the streaked window. Then came another buzz. A new message. Nadia Pierce. The name flashed across the screen, and something in my chest tightened. It had been years. I used to think she forgot me. Turns out, she just hid the proof. The waffle diner hadn't changed. Still the same cracked red booths and laminated menus that curled at the corners. The kind of place that smelled like syrup and cooking oil no matter what time of day. Rain tapped on the windows like it was trying to get in. I waited for Nadia with my fingers wrapped tight around a chipped mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. She arrived 10 minutes late, hair pulled back, jacket damp from the rain. She looked thinner, tired in the way that wasn't about sleep. She didn't offer a hug, and I didn't ask for one. We just nodded, like people who once knew each other too well. "You look the same," she said, sliding into the booth. "I don't feel it." Silence sat between us for a moment, filled only by the clatter of forks and the hiss of an overworked griddle. Then she reached into her bag. "I found something," she said, her voice low. "At your mom's house." She pulled out a wrinkled envelope. My handwriting on the front stopped me cold. That letter. The one I wrote after the funeral. When the grief still felt sharp and stupid, and I thought maybe, just maybe, my mother might see me without Rowan in the frame. I had dropped it in her mailbox myself. I remembered the way my fingers shook. I never got a reply, and so I assumed she'd thrown it away. But here it was, edges yellowed, still sealed, untouched. She kept it. I asked. Nadia shook her head slowly. "Not exactly. I found it in her coupon drawer, under a stack of expired Bed Bath and Beyond offers. Not even in a box. Not even hidden. Just there." The rain tapped harder. I took the envelope, hands trembling in a way they hadn't for weeks. I didn't open it. I remembered every word I'd written. "If your heart still has a seat for me, I'd like to sit there again. Just once." It wasn't poetry. It wasn't clever. It was just me, asking to matter. And she hadn't thrown it away. She just hadn't thought it mattered enough to read. I looked at Nadia. "You think she ever meant to open it?" Her eyes flicked down. "I don't know. I don't think she lost it. I think she didn't care enough to remember where she put it." There was no dramatic collapse inside me. No wave of grief. Just clarity. I hadn't been discarded. I had been filed away, like an old receipt. Not useful. Not urgent. Not worth revisiting. That stung more than rage ever could. I set the letter down on the table between us like it was radioactive. "You know," I said, "for the longest time I thought being thrown away would be the worst thing. But at least trash gets a decision." Nadia winced. "I'm sorry. I should have reached out sooner." "You vanished," I said. I was grieving too. We all were. Another pause. The waitress dropped off a refill I didn't ask for. Neither of us touched it. Then Nadia said, almost in a whisper, "That's not the only thing I found." She reached into her bag again. My stomach tightened. Her smile was everywhere, on the fridge magnets, in the picture frames, nestled between captions like, "So proud of you," and "Our star." But mine? It was like I'd never existed. I sat on the faded corduroy couch in Nadia's apartment, staring at the screen of her tablet as she scrolled through Delilah's latest Facebook post. A family memories album. 17 pictures. Rowan in every one. My parents, cousins, even our old dog, Max. No me, not even in the background. "I used to be in that picture," I said, pointing to one from the porch swing, summer of junior year. I remembered the humidity, the lemonade, the way Cliff had said, "Smile, girls." But now, it was cropped just so. Rowan at the center. An empty corner where my shoulder used to be. Nadia bit her lip. "I thought maybe you'd already seen it." "No," I said quietly. "I've been too busy pretending I didn't care." She got up and walked to a small bookshelf in the corner, the wood bowed slightly under the weight of memory. "I think this will sting worse." She pulled down an old high school yearbook. Senior year. I remembered that year vividly. I'd been the student editor, working late into the night on layouts, color correction, even the font choice. She laid the book on the table, flipped to the staff acknowledgments. I leaned in. There it was. Editor-in-Chief, Rowan Wynn. No Callista Wynn. Not even in small print. I flipped faster. Through the senior quotes. The club photos. Every time there should have been a picture of me, it was either blurred, cropped, or completely absent. Until I found it. A photo from the year-end banquet. Rowan smiling big, wearing the same dress I wore that night. I recognized it because I'd saved for weeks to buy it, and I remembered standing next to her when the photo was taken. In the printed version, only Rowan remained. The arm beside her was clearly cut at the edge of the image. My arm, my presence cropped out, then captioned over like I was never there to begin with. Nadia was watching me carefully. "I found that 2 years ago." I almost said something then. "Why didn't you?" She hesitated. Then said, "Rowan reached out to me. Told me not to bring up, well, anything. Said she was trying to protect the family narrative." I exhaled hard through my nose. Protect it from what? The truth. Nadia didn't answer. I pushed the yearbook aside. You know, I used to think being ignored was the worst thing. But this is a calculated erasure. She didn't just move on. She rewrote history. Nadia nodded. That's not even the worst part. I turned to her. She opened her laptop and typed something quickly, then turned it toward me. It was a website, Rowan's online learning platform. A polished brand. Rowan teaches. I clicked through a few tabs. Pre-written curriculum. Downloadable lesson plans. SAT prep material. Annotated guides. And then I saw it. The format. The phrasing. The examples. They were mine. From the years I'd spent tutoring, building my own resources. I had even shared some with Rowan back when we still spoke. I think she's using your old lesson plans, Nadia said softly. Selling them, as if they're hers. I sat back, stunned. This wasn't just emotional theft anymore. This was real. Measurable. Monetized. My stomach twisted. She's building a career off of what she stole from me. Nadia closed the laptop. What are you going to do? I stared out the rain-specked window, heart pounding. I don't know yet, I said. But I won't let her erase me again. It wasn't the copy that hurt. It was seeing her name on it, where my name should have been. I sat at a table in the corner of the public library study, the one closest to the outlet, where the overhead light flickered as if it were hesitating. Nadia sat across from me, flipping through a stack of printouts from my monitor. Among them was the familiar logo, Bright Math, by Rowan Wynn. I stared at it, unblinking, because I had seen that design before. I had thought of it back in the days of struggling in coffee shops, color correcting and formatting PowerPoints with $60 in my bank account and a laptop with cracked hinges. I scrolled down to the introduction. The first sentence was, "We believe every student deserves to have things explained in a way they can understand." I wrote it one winter night, after Riley, my first student, left her desk and said, "You're the only one who makes me understand this stuff." Nadia sighed beside me. "She didn't just take your content. She took your voice." I nodded. My hands were cold. Part of me wanted to laugh, because I had thought that maybe Rowan just wanted attention, just praise. But this was profit, strategy, ownership. I clicked to the bottom of the page. A small line appeared. Copyright Rowan Wynn, all rights reserved. I felt my chest tighten. She filed a copyright, I said. She legalized something that didn't belong to her. "You can sue," Nadia said quietly. Her voice was low, as if she was afraid of being overheard. I looked at her, then at the screen. In my head, all those years of quiet work, all those nights sleeping at my desk, the students calling me savior teacher played like a film reel running backwards. Maybe I could sue. I had proof. There were old emails. There were copies of the original Word files, the file names still ending in Callista_beta_draft. I really could. But instead of typing in report copyright infringement, I closed my browser. Nadia's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" I took a deep breath. Not deep, not rushed. Just enough to smell the old paper around me and the silence that hung like a thin blanket. "No," I whispered. "I'll do something else first." "What do you mean?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at my finger on the table. The little scar from that paper cut was still there. Almost faded, but enough to remind me that some wounds bleed without a knife. And sometimes the best way to heal is to talk about it. Not in court. In public. For once, my voice didn't shake. And people listened. I hadn't prepared much, no script, no specialized lighting. Just a small corner of my rented room that I'd repainted myself, with a few potted cacti and a bookshelf that Riley had helped me assemble. The webcam light on my laptop turned red. I took a breath. The room was dead silent, save for the ticking of an old wall clock that someone had left behind. I used to fear silence, but now it felt like consent. I began. "Hello, everyone," I said. "My name is Callista Wynn, and this is my story." I told it without crying, without screaming, just the truth. I told it about the handkerchief that was never opened, about the email that was never returned, about the cutout photos, the fragments of memories that others had decided I shouldn't keep. I showed a screenshot, a lecture I'd emailed to my mom to brag about, now on the site under someone else's name. I opened the voice memo from 3 years ago, a section of me talking about how to teach dividing fractions. On Bright Math, it was repeated almost word for word, with only the voice changing. I wasn't accusing. I was proving. I didn't use a hashtag. I didn't tag anyone. I just posted the video to a teacher forum, The Unheard Educator, where, surprisingly, many people had been whispering along with me. After 2 hours, the video had more than 10,000 views. The comments started pouring in. One person wrote, "I was also removed from the class I created. Thank you for speaking for us." A former student left a message. "You taught me the SAT in 2017. You're the reason I got into college. I've never forgotten you. And I won't let anyone else forget you. I sat quietly, reading each line. Not because I needed support, but because I thought, if I disappeared, no one would notice. Turns out, I was wrong. When Riley walked in with a glass of apple juice, I just nodded in thanks. She looked at the screen, smiled slightly, and quietly walked away. She didn't need to say anything. She knew this was my moment to regain myself. I was about to hang up when a new message popped up. Hi, Callista. I'm a freelance journalist. I think there's more to the story. Can I interview you? I looked up. The webcam light was still blinking, like a tiny red eye waiting for an answer. I wasn't in a hurry. I just smiled. For the first time in my life, I had a choice to stay silent or to continue. I waited years for them to say sorry. And when they finally did, it wasn't even for me. My phone buzzed just as the afternoon light filtered through the thin curtains. I was folding up an electricity bill when the screen read, Rowan Wynn is now live, setting the record straight. I didn't mean to look, but I did. There was just a part of me that hoped, a small, weak, tired part, that maybe, this time, they meant it. The live stream began with a white background and carefully adjusted lighting. Rowan was wearing a beige sweater, the I'm just a normal person look that influencers wear when they get caught. She smiled slightly, nodded, and said, Hi, everyone. Today's not about numbers or content. Today's about truth. I sat on the edge of the bed, my arms hanging limply. Rowan continued. Some of you may have heard things online. There's been some misunderstandings regarding my academic platform. And I just want to clarify, Bright Math was always about empowering students. I have immense respect for all educators, including my sister who's currently on a healing journey. Healing journey? I smirked. It wasn't healing. It was abandonment. Survival. None of them knew I'd been sitting in an unheated dorm room in the middle of winter, retyping lesson plans line by line. The screen switched to an inserted video clip. It was my mother, Delilah. She sat in a chair, behind her a decorative bookshelf. Her voice was gentle, but distant, as if she were reading a line. As a mother, it's been painful to watch my daughters go through this. We support both our daughters equally. We hope for peace and understanding moving forward. Cut. Back to Rowan, who nodded slightly and said, We're all learning. And this is my truth. I turned off the video. Not because I was angry, but because I had no more expectations. No name. No clear apology. Nothing really for me, just strategy. None of them really saw me. I took the worn leather notebook out of the edge and turned to a new page. In the dim light from the window, I wrote a line in bold, decisive strokes. Healing doesn't come from statements. It comes from fire. And I knew the rest of the story wasn't about them. It was about me. I didn't expect anything that day. No card. No note. Certainly no cake. But when I opened my phone to check the text from Riley about the next day's class, I saw the words blaring at the top of my feed. Happy birthday to our bright, beautiful girl. There was a video attached. Rowan, dressed in a cream-colored dress, blowing out candles on a two-tiered cake covered in sugared flowers. I looked at the date. They had chosen today. My birthday. And I wasn't in any of the frames. As if I had never been born on this day. My father stood beside me, his glass of champagne raised. My mother smiled brightly, hugged Rowan's shoulders, and said into the camera, To our radiant girl, we are so proud of who you've become. I muted the video. Not because it hurt, because it was familiar. My apartment was cleaner than usual that day. I cleaned the kitchen, replaced the new discount curtains, and rearranged the books by cover color. Not for any special occasion. Just because I wanted to feel like a normal person with some breathing room. There was a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was Riley, holding a small cardboard box, standing awkwardly. Hi. I know we didn't have a session today, but well, it was on your profile. It said today's your birthday. So I, got these. He held out a box of cupcakes with pale purple frosting, skewered with little star-shaped sticks. One was a little crooked, but that was okay. I was surprised and touched in the quietest way. Thank you, I said, my voice no higher than a whisper. That's really kind. Want to split one? He asked and sat down on the chair, not waiting for an invitation. I already had two. So technically, you owe me. We ate the cupcakes in silence for a while, the only sound being the clinking of plastic spoons against paper. Riley looked at me, hesitant. Happy birthday, Miss Callista. You deserve more than this. The words kept replaying in my head, even after he left, and I cleaned up the mess of ice cream wrappers that had fallen to the floor. I turned on FaceTime with Nadia a few minutes later. She was lying in bed reading a book, her eyes tired but bright. I just need a congratulations, I said softly. Nothing else. Congratulations, Nadia replied, then added, You're not forgotten. Not by everyone. As night fell, the yellow light outside the window began to blur in the thin rain. I took out my notebook and wrote a few lines to myself. Not a work note. Not a plan for revenge. Just a small promise. Next year. I will. Not sure what. No picture of the party, the singing, the lights. Just an affirmation. That in a year, I will be present in my own life. Not waiting for someone else to say my name to exist. I hadn't been back to the branch since Eloise died. The beige walls, the old wooden counter, and the quiet jazz streaming through the ceiling speakers. Everything was exactly as it had been the day I'd gone with her to make the final deposit into the trust fund, what she called her storm anchor. When I told her I wanted to be a teacher for life, she just laughed and said, You need a backup plan. The world isn't kind to teachers like you. I reminded myself that I was just there to check on some things. But in truth, I already knew. Some part of me had known all along. We'll need a few minutes to find the records, the teller said, her voice soft as if apologizing for the time being lost. I nodded and sat down in the waiting room, the leather peeling. When the file was placed in front of me, the smell of old paper immediately made my stomach churn. I flipped through the pages, my hands shaking slightly. It was on line 4 of that year, a transfer entry. Minus $9,400.00. Transferred to Win Media LLC. Transaction date, a week after I left their house. I read it over and over again. The company name was Rowan's. The amount. The part 1 hadn't touched. The part Eloise had said was for later, when you're ready to start over. But it turned out Rowan was ready for me. I heard the bank pen drop to the floor. The clerk turned to look at me worried. Do you need help? I'm fine, I said, my voice hoarse, but not broken. I didn't cry. Only a single tear fell down my cheek, not out of weakness, but out of truth. The truth didn't break me. It just burned something inside me. She took my future to fund hers, I muttered. No one answered. Just the cold glow of fluorescence on the paper. I walked out of the bank as if my shoes had gotten lighter. Not because it was easier, but because I saw clearly. No more assumptions, no more doubts. I called Nadia as I crossed the parking lot. Are you okay? Her voice came through the speaker. I think, I said slowly, I found a reason to stop being silent. A beat of silence. Callista, what are you going to do? I didn't answer her. I ended the call, rolled up the documents in my hand, and dialed a number I'd saved. When the other end answered, I said, I've never seen my inbox explode like fireworks. Every time I refresh, there are 20, 30 messages. Strange names. Stories that are eerily similar to mine. I sit cross-legged on Nadia's sofa, my laptop open in front of me, the screen split in two. On one side is my video, now over 300,000 views. On the other, my inbox, filled with headlines. You're not alone. Finally someone said it. Can I share this with my students? The TV behind me is playing the morning news. The illustration is a girl looking into the camera with a calm gaze. It's me. Cut from a video I shot with an old webcam. Nadia walks by, holding 2 cups of coffee. You're officially viral, she says, half smiling, half worried. I don't know what to make of it. There's a strange calmness inside, like when you're swimming and your head finally comes up above water. An email popped up from Melissa Torres, the Women's Tribune. Hi, Callista. We're running a feature on influencer fraud and sibling silencing. We'd love to interview you. I read the phrase sibling silencing over and over again. Never had I thought there was a term for what I was going through. But it turns out I wasn't the first. And I certainly wouldn't be the last. That afternoon, Rowan posted a video response. Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. There have been misunderstandings. I love my sister. This hurts me too. But the comments below weren't as usual. You loved her enough to erase her? This isn't apology. It's PR. Did you pay her back for the curriculum you stole? I didn't need to respond. The internet did the rest. Riley sent a congratulatory text, and so did his mother. Hers caught me by surprise. Thank you. I thought my daughter was the problem. Turns out the system is. I never thought my voice would reach anyone but myself. But now I knew, silence isn't just a burden to yourself. It's contagious, and so breaking it can be contagious, too. When Nadia played another TV clip, where the anchor called my name in the middle of the news, my phone buzzed. Delilah Wynn. I hadn't saved my mother's name in my new contacts, but I recognized the number. My hand stiffened as I opened the message. Can we talk privately? Just 5 words. No apology. No explanation. But the first signal. I stared at the screen for a long time. No response. Not yet. I didn't answer her last 10 calls. This one? I did. I sat on a wooden bench in the park where the sunset had dyed the grasses by the path golden. Children were laughing in the distance, the sound of bicycles rolling like gentle waves in my head. My hand hovered over the phone, the screen vibrating. Delilah Wynn, calling. The 11th call since everything had begun. I still remembered the first time she called after I left the house. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I was empty. But today, I put the headphones on. And I pressed accept. Callista? Her voice was quieter than I remembered, as if she were out of breath. We didn't know. We didn't realize it was that bad. I didn't answer. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I didn't want to fill the silence for her. 15 seconds passed. Then I spoke, softly and firmly. You knew. You chose. There was silence on the other end of the line. There was only the sound of a car driving away and someone kicking gravel near my chair. Rowan, he wanted to fix it. He didn't know. She hesitated, her voice like someone fumbling with bills in her hand. She wants to make it right. I waited. But the apology didn't come. I leaned back in my chair. A fallen leaf touched my shoulder and fell to the ground. Delilah, I said, this isn't about Rowan anymore. This is about me not needing you to approve who I am. I heard her inhale, not from surprise, but because she had finally lost her grip on the script. There was a long pause. Then she asked, as if the words were stuck in her throat. Then why did you answer? I looked up, watching the sky turn a deep purple. One early star twinkled, shaky but clear. To end the story on my terms, I took off my headphones, set the phone down beside me. My head felt light, like I'd just finished a song that would never be finished. No tears. No screams. Just me, the old wooden chair, and this moment, for the first time, I was the one who wrote the ending of a conversation. Not them. They gathered at the table. For once, I didn't bring the chair. It was a bright morning. Birds chirped too cheerfully outside the coffee shop window, and someone was playing an acoustic cover of an 80s pop song a bit too loud over the speakers. I got there 10 minutes early. I always do. Not because I'm eager, but because I like to know where the exits are. The place smelled like cinnamon and fresh paint. A newly opened chain, meant to look cozy with wood paneling and pastel cushions. I picked the far booth. Ordered chamomile tea, even though I barely tasted anything these days. The door chimed. Delilah walked in first, wearing pearl earrings I recognized from our cousin's wedding, still trying to present her version of motherly poise. Rowan followed 3 minutes later, sunglasses perched on her head, like she'd just come from a photo shoot, not a family reckoning. Neither of them asked how I'd been. No surprise there. Delilah sat down gently, smoothing the napkin across her lap. Thank you for coming, she said, like this was a formality before a fundraiser. I nodded once. Rowan remained standing until she was sure everyone noticed her, then finally took the seat across from me. I think it's time, Delilah began, that we let bygones be bygones. I sipped my tea. She glanced around as if searching for approval. We've all made mistakes. We've said things we didn't mean. Some things were said publicly, Rowan cut in, and they've affected more than just family. I raised an eyebrow. Is this an apology? Rowan opened her designer bag and pulled out a folder. No. This is a proposal. She slid it across the table. I didn't touch it, but I looked. Inside was a short contract, 3 pages. An NDA. A small settlement offer. A line that read, compensation for use of materials associated with bright math. I leaned back. No apology then. We're acknowledging what happened, Delilah offered weakly. And we're trying to move forward. With silence, I said. Rowan shifted in her seat. Not everything needs to be aired out in public. It doesn't help anyone. Did it help when you aired out my teaching materials under your name? That shut her up for a second. I looked down at the folder again. Clean font. Legal jargon. A tidy conclusion to a messy betrayal. And then I realized something. I wasn't angry. Not in the explosive, throw the teacup kind of way. I was clear. Clean. I stood up. Delilah blinked. Are you leaving? This meeting isn't about healing, I said, gathering my bag. It's about hiding. Delilah opened her mouth, but Rowan beat her to it. You're still so dramatic. I turned to her, looked her straight in the eyes. No. I'm just done pretending you aren't. I walked out without another word. The tea was still warm in my hands. Outside, the wind was picking up. It whipped my coat open and sent a napkin fluttering from the table behind me. They called this a family meeting. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one clinging to family. I once signed everything under someone else's brand. Not anymore. The front window of the co-working space shimmered in the late morning light. Someone had just wiped it down, and the words "Callista Cares, Learning for Life" were now visible from across the street, simple vinyl letters, placed by my own hands. I didn't rent the most expensive suite or hire a PR firm to promote a launch. What I did do was plant something rooted, my own name, my own mission, no filters, no family credits. The walls inside were soft cream, decorated with student artwork and paper stars Riley had helped cut. A chalkboard near the coffee stand read in looping print, "Every learner deserves to feel seen." Nadia arrived first, balancing a tray of iced muffins and clipboards. She gave me a knowing look before setting them down. "This place smells like a beginning." "It better," I replied, checking the plug on the projector one last time. Soon, the room began to fill. Not a flood, but enough to feel real. Local teachers, a few moms who'd followed my video, Riley's cousin who wanted math help, and Riley herself, dressed in a button-up shirt too big for her, standing proudly beside the table of handouts. "Can I read it now?" she whispered. I nodded. She stepped to the front, trembling slightly, but stronger than the day we met, and read the mission statement I wrote from scratch. "We believe in more than scores. We believe in students, their voices, their pace, their pain. Education isn't just a ladder. It's a bridge, and bridges must be built with care." My throat tightened. I watched Riley's eyes as she read, steady and sincere. They clapped afterward, not a roaring crowd, but real hands, real voices. I caught Nadia's glance from across the room. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Later, while handing out flyers, a woman walked up to me hesitantly. Late 20s, glasses, a nervous energy about her. "You don't remember me," she said, "but you taught me during summer school, years ago." I almost failed out. I tilted my head. "You gave me this notebook," she continued, pulling something faded from her tote. "You wrote, 'You're not the grade. You're the growth.'" I never forgot that. I smiled, a quiet swell of pride rising behind my ribs. "That notebook," I said, "was my last one that summer." She looked down at it. "Then I'm glad it came to me." She left before I could ask her name. But the imprint stayed, just like the words I'd once scribbled in the margins of my own journals, hoping someone would listen. As the open house wound down, I lingered behind to tidy up, folding the handouts, unplugging the projector. Nadia was already gone, and Riley had to be home for dinner. I locked up, walked back to my studio, still wearing my name tag like it was armor. That night, I opened my laptop, planning to journal about the day. Instead, I found a new email in my inbox. Subject line: "We've been following your story. Would you consider writing a book?" It was from a mid-sized publishing house in Boston. The editor wrote that they were looking for authentic voices in education, people who've lived it, survived it, and wanted to change it. She called my video an act of quiet revolution. She asked if I'd consider writing about educational trauma and how we come back from it. I closed my laptop slowly. This wasn't a trophy. It wasn't revenge. It was a door. And this time it had my name on it. The booth at the corner of May's Diner had cracked red vinyl, and I slid in with the kind of grace reserved for someone who had nowhere else to be. Outside, the sky was a crisp stretch of November gray. Inside, the air smelled like reheated stuffing and burnt coffee. I ordered the cranberry pie before the menu even landed. It wasn't that I forgot what day it was. Quite the opposite. Back at the house I used to call home, Delilah's turkey would be resting under foil, Rowan would be rehearsing another version of Gratitude for the camera, and Cliff would still be rubbing his temples, trying to disappear into the wallpaper. They set the table for 4 this year, not 5. No one mentioned my name. I was told that by Nadia, who received the annual mass text from Delilah. Happy Thanksgiving, from our family to yours. There was no direct address. No warmth. Just absence dressed up in politeness. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the cream swirl like fog, letting silence fill the space that once begged for recognition. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a gentle drawl, refilled my cup and glanced at the untouched pie. You all right, hon? She asked, resting the pot gently on the counter. I'm all right, I said. Just not where I used to be. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe she saw the hollowness of a holiday stretched thin over strained family ties. You've got kind eyes, she said. Reminds me of my daughter. Haven't heard from her this week. You sure you don't want some whipped cream on that pie? On the house. I smiled then. Not the performative kind. A small one, soft at the corners, like an old habit returning without force. I'd like that, I said. Thank you. As she walked away, I pulled out my phone. A single text from Delilah blinked on the screen. We missed you. No apology. No name. Just 3 words that pretended to mean something without risking the weight of accountability. I stared at the message, then closed it. Not deleted, just tucked away, the same way they used to tuck away the truth. On the table next to the pie plate was a stack of community flyers. I flipped through them absent-mindedly until one caught my eye. Mentorship for Adult Educators, hosted by Greenville High. My old school. The flyer was printed in cheap black and white, but the bold letters spoke louder than color could. They weren't asking for stars. They were asking for stories. Survivors. Teachers with something to say. I folded it neatly and slipped it into my bag. Around me, the diner murmured with conversation. An elderly couple debated the best way to carve a turkey. A young man talked too loudly on speakerphone about football scores, and somewhere behind the kitchen door, someone laughed from deep in their chest. I didn't feel like a ghost anymore. I felt like a person reclaiming a rhythm. One bite into the cranberry pie, and I realized something. Peace doesn't always come with reunion. Sometimes it arrives with distance and a plate of something warm, offered by a stranger who sees you not as a shadow, but as someone worth a second slice. As I stood to leave, I whispered to no one, maybe I'm someone's daughter again. Just not the one I used to be. Then I tucked the flyer deeper into my bag and walked out into the wind, where my name wasn't waiting. But my future was. The river was quieter than usual. Not silent, never that. Ducks paddled near the reeds, children's laughter drifted from the walking trail behind me, and somewhere upriver, a saxophone's low hum bled from a house window. But inside me, stillness. I sat on the wooden bench with the chipped armrest, the one I'd passed so many times but never sat on. Today, I claimed it. A scarf, cranberry red, wrapped around my shoulders, fluttering like ribbon ends with every soft gust. I had my journal in my lap. My phone lay beside me face down. I wasn't waiting for it to ring. I hadn't even checked it. That morning, I brewed coffee without glancing at notifications. I washed dishes without thinking about who I hadn't heard from. And when I left my apartment, locking the door behind me, I carried only what belonged to me, my keys, my wallet, and the weight of my own name, finally unshared. The journal creaked a little when I opened it. The leather was worn, soft from years of being carried, but rarely used. I flipped past blank pages and half-started entries. Past pages written in ink that had smeared from tears. Past the old habit of drafting letters to people who would never read them. I stopped at a clean sheet and wrote, deliberately, with the pen Nadia had given me months ago. Chapter 1. Scene. I underlined it. And then, without planning to, I smiled. Not the small, practiced smile you give in public, but a real one rooted not in approval or attention, but in the gentle recognition that, for once, I didn't need to be explained. I just was. My phone buzzed. Once. Then again. And again. I didn't flip it over, but I knew. Somehow, I always did. 14. 14 calls. Just like that morning months ago when I walked out of the house for the last time. 14 missed calls from a family who hadn't known how to hold me close until I stopped asking. 14 calls now, probably from Rowan, maybe from Delilah, possibly from Cliff. But none from me, because I wasn't trying to make anyone see anymore. I wasn't asking to be re-added to the family chat or tagged in a photo. I wasn't chasing apologies in clever disguises or empty affirmations. I was sitting beside a river at sunset, and the only voice I was listening to was my own. Across the trail, a little boy held the hand of an older man. They walked slowly, the child matching the elder's pace instead of tugging him forward. The man nodded, pausing now and then to catch his breath, and the boy waited each time with quiet patience. I watched them, and it ached in the best way. Once, I would have given anything for a moment like that with my father. Once, I'd offered all of myself, my time, my money, my silence, to buy back love that should have been free. But now? I didn't need them to say it. I didn't need anyone to, because I had sat with myself through the silence. And I hadn't left. I picked up the phone, held it in my palm, still buzzing. Call number 14. I let it ring out, and then I powered the phone off. I turned to a new page in the journal. This time, I wrote. Chapter 2. Belonged. And then I looked up. The sky had turned amber, streaked with lavender. The sun wasn't sinking, it was being embraced. Maybe that was me too. No longer falling. Just folding into something honest. I stood slowly, joints creaking from the stillness. I tucked the scarf tighter around my shoulders and closed the journal. But I left the phone behind, right there on the bench. Someone else might find it. Or maybe no one would. But I was done waiting on it to ring. I walked the trail toward the bridge. Past the boy and the old man, past the duck pond, past the playground where memories could no longer sting. I walked like someone who wasn't chasing or escaping, like someone free. And in the last light of the day, with nothing but my own steps to echo the rhythm of closure, I whispered the truth that had taken me 14 calls, 1,000 tears, and one whole self to find. I used to want them to see me. Now, I just want to see myself. I am someone who has stood on the sidelines of my own story. I have followed Callista's journey not just with my eyes, but with my heart, because in her silence, I hear myself. What haunts me most is not the accusations or the erasures from my memory. It is the feeling of being forgotten when I am still there. Callista did not need revenge. She needed space to breathe, and in the end, she found it not in her family, but in herself. This story is not about rebellion. It is about coming back, but not back to others. Back to yourself. And perhaps that is a journey that each of us must take, sooner or later. What about you? Have you ever felt invisible even in your own family? Have you ever chosen silence, not because you are weak, but because you have nothing left to prove? Share your feelings in the comments section, because who knows, what you write might be what someone needs to hear. If this story reminds you of a memory that once hurt you, but also made you stronger, leave comment number 1. And if you're watching this video from a peaceful place, share with me the name of the city you live in. Who knows, the distance will be closer when we know we are not alone. If you love gentle but profound stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because Callista's journey may have ended, but other healing stories are still waiting for you ahead. Thank you for listening. Thank you for accompanying me through 16 chapters, not to find an ending, but to understand that there are chapters in life that we need to rewrite with our own handwriting. See you again in the next stories.